the swearing in, kind of us.
But you don't get to, it's not an Etch-a-Sketch. You don't just get to shake it, on the swearing in and everything goes away, because a lot of the same ministry and political staffers and decision makers are still there, right? So
something is breaking in Ottawa, and it's not just public trust. It's only Wednesday, and Mark Carney is out there speed dating opposition leaders before giving a desperate, please don't panic, I promise we know what we're doing, trust me, bro, address later tonight. When governments act like this, it's because they're terrified, okay? I'm Jasmine Lane. Subscribe, like, follow, and comment your thoughts down below. Share this video as well. The Liberals have flooded our country. They have broken the system. And now CBC says that the real problem is that Conservatives have noticed. It's the week that Canada's elites tried to rebuild public confidence, only to accidentally prove that they deserve absolutely none. All that and more coming up today on Over Opinionated.
Good morning, Prime Minister. What is the message you hope to convey to Canadians tonight with your address?
The message will be conveyed in the address, but I don't want to scoop myself.
No, I understand.
Mark Carney is scheduled to have a private meeting with Leader of the Opposition Pierre Poilievre of the Conservative Party to discuss the upcoming November 4th budget. They have a lot of very different ideas there. Pierre Poilievre wrote a letter calling for the deficit to be under $42 billion. The PBO has said that the deficit will likely be around $70 billion this fiscal year. There have been other reports out there that it could be as high as $100 billion.
Every dollar this Liberal Prime Minister spends is taken out of the pockets of hardworking Canadians through inflationary deficits and higher taxes. Let's not forget that for 10 years, Liberals claimed runaway deficits would spark investment. The current finance minister, back when he was industry minister, helped double the national debt, promising it would lead to growth. And what did Canadians get? The worst per capita GDP growth in the G7, and investment per worker collapsed by more than 10%. So will he ensure that his next budget will stop the inflationary deficits so Canadians can afford to live again? Or will he instead double down on Trudeau's policies and make Canadians pay for his failures?
It's really important to note, because this can be so easily skirted over, that this isn't normal. Yes, a prime minister, especially in a minority parliament, will of course, go and talk to opposition leaders, whether that be the NDP, the Bloc, the Conservatives, most notably. However, that will almost always happen after the budget has been drafted, not while it is still in negotiation. And those types of conversations will happen before a budget vote, not before the budget has even been released to vote on. This, to me, signals weakness, not collaboration. And of course, Carney's team will call this consultation. See, look, we're listening to everybody. Yeah, we're leaders here. We're all working together. That's not what this is, though. This is really just crisis outreach. When a prime minister has to personally meet his opposition to ask them not to sink his first budget, that means the House leader has failed, and his finance minister's credibility is shot. Additionally, Mark Carney is hosting a national press conference to pre-address this budget. That's also not normal at all. Governments who are confident in their budgets do not do national press conferences before the thing even comes out to try to convince you. So to me, I think that Carney's preemptive address tonight is an attempt to set the tone before the numbers drop, which is a way to lower expectations or prepare you for the blow while pretending to raise hope.
Not too much detail, but I can tell you that he is going to be speaking to an audience of young Canadians, students this evening. That is on purpose. We've heard the Carney government talk a lot about how this is going to be a budget of generational investments, that we are at really a rupture, from the past, that the way forward is going to require some strategic thinking, wanting to sort of put some markers down about exactly what's in store for, frankly, the people who would have to deal with the consequences, both in terms of, the job prospects going forward in a changed Canada, the investments needed to sort of help the economy economy have a future here? But also, let's be frank, if there's a lot of spending, that's going to mean a big deficit, and that also is borne by subsequent generations.
The timing of this is really significant too. The fact that he's meeting with Pierre Poilievre today, that allows Carney the opportunity then to go on TV during this national address later tonight to say, I've met with all the opposition leaders and we are finding common ground for Canadians. See, everybody's working together. Trust me, please, and thank you. It's all political theater. It's all PR meant to look like a consensus when in reality, nobody's actually buying that. I think the one thing that he has rooting for him right now is the fact that to go into an election by Christmas would not be a very good idea for pretty much anybody, financially more than anything at all.
This budget is generational. This will help define this country, the scale of investment to create hundreds of thousands of high-paying, high-skilled jobs for people who are listening to this program. If you're young and you want to go into the skilled trades, with our budget, we are going to create those jobs. But also to create a much stronger economy so that we can't be sideswiped by decisions south of the border, and that we are in control of our own destiny. And that is truly turning the corner. And that's not just turning the corner, if I can keep the metaphor, it's driving where we want to go. And that's what we're going to deliver.
Let's decode that, shall we? So first and foremost, the economic reality check, which is that Canada's productivity crisis is decades deep. You do not fix that with a few budget line items. That requires structural reform, like perhaps a new government. I don't know, crazy. Regulatory, tax, industrial, all of which Ottawa keeps tightening instead. So good luck with that one. Investment flight is incredibly real. There is so much data to prove this, that your policies that you are hunkering down on instead of adjusting and fixing so that they go with the market and capital is somewhere that wants to come to Canada again. Canada's foreign direct investment fell by $49.5 billion, while the U.S. gained $400 billion in new capital inflows. That's freaking astronomical, okay? Corporate taxes, ESG mandates, and uncertainty, largely around energy policy, have made Canada one of the least attractive G7 nations to invest in.
Another day, more costly slogans from that member of parliament. But now Canadians are learning it was a bait and switch. Today, another terrible tragedy. As they laugh, 1,200 workers at the Ingersoll Cami plant learned that they would lose their jobs after that Prime Minister promised he would negotiate a win and that he would keep their jobs here in Canada. They join with 2,000 workers in Brampton, many more in Oshawa. How does the Prime Minister look in the eyes of the very workers that he sold out and betrayed?
If you've got money sitting in a savings account, a 401k, or IRA, this message could determine whether you retire comfortably or not at all. This episode is brought to you by Noble Gold Investments. And you know me, I like straight talk and no fluff. That is especially true when it comes to protecting your money. And gold is as real as it gets. Wall Street gives you numbers on a screen. Gold is real. It's in your name, and it has been trusted for over 5,000 years. Here's what I like most about Noble Gold. They let you use your retirement funds to own physical gold, not just paper promises. Your gold is stored separately in secure, regulated vaults in Texas or Delaware, and you can even visit to see and hold it yourself. Try doing that with where you're currently storing your money. If you want a retirement investment that's real and not just numbers on a screen, go to jasminegold.com or call 877-646-5347 to get your free wealth protection kit. Remember that all investing carries risk. Nothing is guaranteed, but with Noble Gold, at least you can see, touch, and hold your future.
I'll tell you how the Prime Minister how he will deal with the auto sector. He will look at the auto workers in the eyes and he will say, we will fight for your jobs. And that's exactly what we're doing. Every single day, we're negotiating back in Washington, but also, this is important to say that I met this morning with the Canadian CEO of GM. I was in conversation with the head of the labor union of Unifor, and I also talked to Doug Ford, will make sure that we fight for these jobs.
She announced just now that she talked to this person, and she talked to that person, and she talked to this other person, and she talked, and she talked, and they talk, and they talk, and nothing gets done, Mr. Speaker. Canadians are tired of talk. They want their job. This government, or this Prime Minister, looked these workers in the eye and said he would negotiate a win, that he would protect auto jobs, that there would be an all-in-Canada supply chain that would keep them working. They even gave $250 million tax dollars to GM for this plant. And now those workers don't know how they're going to pay their bills. How does this government explain the broken promise and betrayal?
Private sector capital is down significantly year over year. Meanwhile, public sector spending is up in the same periods of time. What does that mean? It means that the government growth is replacing real economic and sustainable growth. And when he says scale of investment, future generational investment, the fine print there is government driven, because a budget does not attract new capital into your economy. That's not how that works. That's subsidy economics is what he's advocating for. Also, hundreds of thousands of high-paying jobs. Where exactly? Because the skilled trades labor shortage already exists. Canada needs approximately 256,000 new tradespeople by 2028 just to replace retirements. And apprenticeship enrollment has fallen 27% since 2013. Not sideswept by decisions south of the border. That one might be the most ironic line of them all, because Canada's economy is more dependent on the United States than at any point in our history since 2005. Roughly 79% of all of our exports go to the U.S. We still lack pipelines. We still lack LNG terminals and domestic refining capacity, forcing energy producers to take U.S. pricing.
One federal policy that you would scrap tomorrow.
Emissions cap and net zero power regs. Have to have two. Both of those. If we're going to, because I care about both of my industries, if we're going to build more oil, we've got to scrap the emissions cap. If we're going to build more AI data centers, we need more natural gas power.
I still just cannot wrap my brain around all of the people who are so anti-Trump, anti-America, really because of the media, and can't put two and two together there. Why is Canada so dependent on America? Oh yeah, we should probably change that, shouldn't we? Ooh, we're not. Guess we're always going to be really dependent on America and should play very nice with them in that case.
Well, the bottom line is we're tired of seeing everything blamed on people outside of Canada. Sure, it has an impact, but the vast majority of our problems have been around for years. Of course, Trump is an easy target in a way. You know, we know a lot of Canadians don't like Trump, and a lot of Canadians don't like the U.S. There's always been that kind of anti-American theme under the surface, and it comes up from time to time. And now is certainly one of those times. So we just want to emphasize the vast majority of our serious economic issues were around long before Trump was a factor at all. We've been suffering. We've been going downhill for a decade now, a liberal decade, and not a mistake. And, you know, a lot of people say, well, you know, we've had some shocks from the global economy. Yeah, we have. So has everybody else. And yet we're doing much more poorly than other countries, and notably the US, who we always compare ourselves to for obvious reasons. And, you know, our standard of living has declined significantly. We see a stalled economy, or worse, we've seen negative quarters of GDP, you know, decline, and tilting toward recession is the way it looks. We see, you know, our dollar's in trouble. I mean, basically every economic factor is not in good shape. Our productivity is a measure of our standard of living, of our wealth as a country. And it's been abysmal. And again, compared to other countries. So, you know, when I see Carney say we're going to be the strongest economy in the G7, it's like, what are you smoking? We're the weakest economy in the G7. We look at the OECD list of countries, we're right at the bottom. So it's not just us saying this. And I think to continue to bring to the attention of Canadians in general, the fact that we can fix our own problems. We're not doing it, but the answers are not a mystery. You know, sometimes the economy is terrible and you go, gee, what could we possibly do to fix it? The answers are incredibly obvious this time around. We're just not doing it, mostly for ideological partisan reasons.
And I do find it quite laughable, the fact that the Liberals for so long have said that one of the reasons why our economy and productivity is so bad is, oh my God, Canadians just don't want to work. So, hey, we got to flood in with all these temporary foreign workers. Yeah, problem is that those temporary foreign workers are taking like 16-year-old high school jobs from the drive-thrus in local communities. They're not actually taking jobs of electricians or things like that. They aren't coming here to do that. Nope, they're coming here to work at a Boston Pizza. And then, in many cases, applying for some sort of a refugee status application after doing so. And it is just, you know, I'm done pretending that this is controversial, because it's not. It's actually incredibly cruel to those workers who are locked into these awful contracts, who are oftentimes paid less, have terrible working conditions, and cannot leave that employer without having to leave the country, which they obviously don't want to do. That's why they came here, right? And when governments get nervous, they do this thing so frequently, which is buying airtime. They control the narrative. They do their best to dominate in that, which they do have the power to do, because the only thing more loyal than the Liberal backbench is their taxpayer-funded PR team.
And what's interesting, JP, as stark as that is, the surge in opposition or discontent with immigration, it's even more notable amongst people who vote Conservative.
Yeah, that's right. More than 80% of Conservative voters now say that there is too much immigration to this country. That's the highest figure that Environics has ever recorded in the 48 years that they've been tracking Canadian views on immigration, the highest among any demographic group they've ever recorded. So let's bring up this graphic. As you can see, 25 years ago, federal voting intentions didn't really tell you a lot about how people felt about immigration, right?
Look at this, right?
But look at the end of that graphic there, yeah.
And Kate, I just wonder about the political polarization. More than 80%, about 82% of Conservative voters versus 40% Liberal, 30% NDPs. This widening on this issue. When issues get polarized like that, the arguments go to the polls, right? And it becomes harder to have a sensible conversation, you know? What are your thoughts on that? Do you worry that this could drive sort of the conversation about this to the edges of sort of the political extremes here?
I think politicians of all parties, including the Conservatives, have a responsibility to keep the conversation focused on data and focused on the programs and holding the government to account, and not, you know, giving credence to some of that more xenophobic expression that seems to be manifesting in this particular study. I do think that the Conservatives have done a very good job keeping focused on that. They focused on challenges with the temporary foreign workers program. You know, to Tonda's point, there's a number of challenges that are brought forward every day to the minister. And so I think Conservatives are talking about immigration. They are right to. The message here is to not stop talking about an issue that is hugely resonant with a significant number of Canadians, not just their voters. But it's important to keep it facts-based and evidence-based. This is a concern for a lot of people in their communities in terms of the impact on social services and on, you know, access to healthcare and education and housing, et cetera. So I think Conservatives are right to talk about it, and they're right to keep sticking to the facts.
Imagine where you have to be at in your brain and your maturity to have polling come out suggesting that a lot of Canadians know that there is a problem with immigration that is affecting us economically. It is affecting our culture. It is affecting our job potential. It is affecting so very much. And we're tired of being called names for addressing a very real concern. Doesn't even matter where people come from. That's not the point. The point is that our system cannot sustain it. That is evidently clear. And instead of saying, oh, wow, I can't believe Canadians are feeling like this, the CBC runs a hit piece to link that to being a terrible, evil Conservative.
As you know, we committed to invest more in the public broadcaster, and we believe that those additional resources will help them make sure that Canadians have access to more information, non-biased information, and more local news across the country.
Get real. I'm Jasmine Lane. Subscribe, like, follow, and comment your thoughts down below. Share this video as well, and I will talk to you tomorrow.